And welcome back to the Survivor PA Season 4 recap. Always, it's me, Coach Drew, joined by Julia. And today we are also joined by Lydia, cast member from Season 4 and frequent guest in the chat, to talk about this most recent episode of Survivor PA. Another really good episode. In fact, there was a part of the episode where it's like a drone shot, and I thought they were going to do like what Survivor does, where they cut straight to the challenge. Now, if they did that, budget-wise, we're talking
crazy,
millions, probably, right? But they didn't do that. I still think the jump cut was really good. But Lydia, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really enjoying the season and watching you guys recap every week. It's been really fun to like relive everything.
So, just going right into it, before we talk about the actual episode, watching it back now, especially you've made it this far in the game, we don't know what happens afterwards. What's your takeaway from your specific character as it relates to like yourself and how it relates to everybody else in the game?
Wait, could you repeat?
Yeah, so how are you liking the way that you are portrayed? Whether you were like, how are you liking your portrayal of it? Yeah.
I think it's very accurate. And it feels like watching it back still feels authentic to like my experience and my memory of it. So I thank you. I do love to be in all the chats and comments. I'm like all up in all of them. But yeah, I think it comes across how it feels authentic to me. And the only thing that I wish you could like see more of is like who's close with who, because like I feel like besides like some of the strategic talks, you don't really get much of that. But I was joking with Jordan yesterday, and I said, "Why is it that every single time I'm on the screen, it's just me and you talking?"
And it's a really good point. But we start the episode. So we ironically, I guess we start the episode with you and Kira talking.
Yeah.
Not you and Jordan.
the one
what do you think about all of this?
I feel like what we see specifically at the start of the episode, but then going on throughout, is very reminiscent to what we're seeing in Survivor proper. We have Olawiki and everyone talking together. We need to stick together. We need to do this. But then every time we get those smaller breakout convos, we get well, I don't want to stay together. Well, this isn't good for me in the long term. And although it didn't come to fruition with anything big happening this vote, I think just like Survivor proper, all these little nuggets are setting us up very, very well for some explosion in the future.
How did you think the vote went, Lydia? Like when you got to camp after the previous vote, what did you think had happened? Or did you know immediately this is exactly how it shut down?
After the first merge vote?
Yes.
I knew exactly what happened. I had talked to Kira like before the tribal about the fact that it was most likely going to. I actually didn't think it was going to tie because I thought my extra vote would be enough for it not to tie. But I knew there was a chance it would tie. So I mean, me and Kira had that conversation before that. And I knew about the the game that Kira was talking about when she was saying, "Oh, in a game I got rocked out. I didn't want that to happen again." I was playing that game, so I knew about that history with her and everything. So I was pretty confident in that merge tribal that a green would flip, and I thought it would be Kira.
And that's the things with these LRGs and orgs or what have you, or even if you played Survivor for a second time, is if you go out in a way, for instance, rocks, when you're going to bat for people that you are strongly working with, you get game PTSD where you don't want that to happen again. No matter how loyal you are to people, hey, I have to make sure, like, especially when I play with people, it's like, yeah, we're good, we're close, But if it comes down between me and you, I'm probably going to pick me because I have to, because I'm trying to win. And so in that situation, it's like, yeah, I'm going to avoid rocks as much as possible because there's still a chance, whatever, I'm not a math person, but there's some type of math there that would say that I would probably go home in that situation. And you don't want to risk that. And so I absolutely understood where she was coming from. I think that was a great way to start the episode, having you two talk to each other. And then we cut to J-Mac played by Lydia because the name said Lydia, but it was J-Mac. And J-Mac
The artist formerly known as J-Mac.
J-Mac. And J-Mac talks about how they didn't think they would catch that much heat that early in the merge. I think they said like 8 or 9 is where they thought they were going to start catching the heat. From your perspective, Lydia, did you feel like J-Mac was this, because we've heard of this a lot all season, that J-Mac's this threat.
Yeah.
From your perspective, has it been that? Like, was it like that up to this point in the game, or was this like, okay, J-Mac's one of the crowd, like they're no bigger or smaller of a threat than the rest of us?
No, I think J-Mac was always a threat to everyone. It was just a matter of like who was willing to work with threats versus who was like trying to go threat hunting. It didn't surprise me that they targeted J-Mac in the first vote, just because so much had happened on that swap pink with J-Mac on it also, and I like, some of us like me, Tyler, and Emily were kind of like completely out of the picture during that whole part. We kind of just like won through the swap, so it doesn't surprise me. I think J-Mac was always kind of like the social center of our tribe, and it kind of maybe was a little obvious to Green too.
I've been J-Mac's biggest defender. I feel like they're my winner pick throughout most of this podcast and this season. But it did really shock me hearing them say that, especially because I feel like it's so obvious to the viewer as well how well ingrained they are. They went to all these tribals, obviously got their way, even though they probably shouldn't have on that swap tribe. So it made me a little nervous for how J-Mac is approaching the game moving forward and not perceiving their threat level, especially because we had that happen. And then later on in the episode, we still see J-Mac sticking firm on wanting Pink to stay together and isolating other members of the former Kapo tribe. And it worries me a bit for how they're going to navigate moving forward.
And we go off that J-Mac confronts Ben about, oh, I heard you put my name out there. And Ben, trying to get in their good graces, says, well, couldn't have been me because I couldn't vote, which means I didn't vote for you. I have no idea what's going on. And shows J-Mac the parchment. And for
J-Mac gave to him.
For people that are not, yes, for people that are not working together, and both of y'all can chime in on this. This is, I mean, it doesn't, I mean, obviously spoilers, it doesn't really work for Ben in the end, but this is something that I wasn't totally against. Hey, we could be good. Yes, I knew the votes were going to me, but I personally didn't vote for you. All these other Jamooks did. So Julie, what did you think about the way that Ben navigated that conversation with J-Mac? When J-Mac saying, hey, I know that you knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, I don't mind the move, because if you're Ben, you're going, all right, I just got to buy time. Right now, I'm Survive in advance. I need to get through a round, maybe one more, and then I see things shaking up. So if this little nugget, if this little interaction is what buys you that one more round until it shakes up, I think it's a good move. I don't think it hurt him, and it's what actively sent him home. So I think it was good on his part. I could be wrong though, Lydia.
Lydia?
I don't think that specific conversation like helped or hurt him as far as like the outcome. I think it was more of a fact that like he was already well known to be like a social threat and a very likable person, and you know, he had like his tight thing with Ethan where I think on green they kind of would have run things if need be, which they never, you know, really needed to do much of anything. But I think it was just his threat level.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, obviously there are a lot of perceived threats at this point in the game. We've heard a lot about a lot of them early in this episode, and one of them who I feel like has kind of like somehow navigated so far is Jordan. And Jordan gives a confessional, and this goes off of what y'all have both said, where Jordan's like, yeah, I don't want to stay Naviti strong. You know, I don't want to do this, but it kind of seems like this is where people are leaning. Says he feels stuck, you know, rock in a hard place, I think is the actual phrase that he uses. Liddy, what was your relationship with Jordan up to this point in the game?
Jordan was one of my closest people with also J-Mac. So like I considered J-Mac my number one, but like I trusted Jordan fully at this point. Like I pretty much talked to him about everything. So I think that's why you see a lot of the conversations are like Jordan and I. And I think like the theme of this whole round was sort of like an underlying frustration. Like some of the pink like Jordan were getting frustrated that they didn't want the game to continue like this whole pink strong way. And then on the other hand, green was frustrated because we wouldn't tell them anything. And they were kind of just like this. I could imagine that being incredibly frustrating. So I think it was just a round of like people wanting to do something, but feeling like you can't do something too soon. You can't like pull the trigger too soon, really, on anything crazy.
Julia, as someone who has won one of these things and has done well in others, I feel like I agree. Like Tina Wesson, I always put Tina Wesson like very high on my winner rankings because of the way that Survivor of the Australian Outback kind of went, where it's like, okay, we always want to keep one number ahead of Kucha in that situation of like, okay, we're going to do this, then we'll vote at one of ours, but we'll never end up in a situation where our numbers are less than the other tribe. Do you feel like, just based off of where we're at in the season, do you feel like that is kind of what's going to happen? Or do you think it's going to be a Naviti strong type thing where it's like, oh no, we're actually just going to stick with all of us to the end and we're never going to flip? Because obviously I have an opinion on that, but
I don't think there's any way that old Lewicki stays tribe strong up until the final six. Especially, again, spoilers, the soapbox that Tyler kind of went on at Tribal. We had multiple very visceral reactions to that from former Lewicki members. I think we are gearing up for a very fluid merge. We've already had Kira flip over, has expressed as well, I don't want it to be like this. We have different relationships forming. I think we will see a much more fluid merge.
And Tyler gives, I mean, and it's funny because as much as I've sat here and said all season, oh yeah, Tyler's the type of person I would enjoy in real life, but like in a game, I would never. Tyler makes a great point that I feel like orgers and LRGers really don't put any stock into, and they probably should. It's just like, hey, it's a numbers game, and if I have a better chance of just sticking strong with my group, why wouldn't I just do that? Because ultimately, and no offense to anyone that watches any of these things, it's more of a fuck the fans. I'm trying to win. I'm not trying to make great television. I'm trying to win the game. And if winning the game means sticking with your group and being in a position where you can navigate through that group so that when you guys inevitably have to turn on each other, you can come out, positive in the end. Why would you not do that? And so when he's sitting there saying that, it's like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, Tyler's right. Tyler's right about that, and cheers to Tyler on that. Both of you, I understand, like, both of y'all have played these games before. You've played a fair few of these games before. What is your opinions on that? Just are you obligated to make a move? Or is it sometimes smart enough to just ride with your crew?
I think that's pretty subjective depending on your positioning. If you were that top dog in your group, you're super incentivized to just run it out because you stay together, you get to the end, you're going to win. If you're on the bottom, you aren't going to get super far once it gets down to you guys. You're more incentivized to make that move. I just think timing in these games is everything. You could have the best move planned in the world, but if it's at the wrong time, it's ultimately going to bite you in the ass.
Lydia, before this season, or I mean, you can talk about the season up to where we're at. What is your opinions on staying? Let's just stay strong, or do you feel like you have to turn on them?
Actually, my first game I ever played was Real Foot, and that's exactly what happened. There was an alliance of 7, and they went to 7, and just everyone around them was just like screaming for the bottom to flip. But it's just the fact that you have to have the self-awareness to know that you're on the bottom. Otherwise, why not go to 7 with your 7? Why not go to 6 with your 6? But you really should be aware of your position in that, because I think in our pink 6 there's definitely a middle and then kind of like 2 wings that it could go one way or the other, but like you kind of have the Jordans in there in the driver's seat, I think.
I agree. And so Gabone's not one of my favorite seasons, but there is a alternate reality where the Onion Alliance and Gabon actually works, and we look at that as one of the greatest alliances of all time, because I think the concept of the Onion Alliance, it should be something that people build. Like, everyone should look at the Onion Alliance as a blueprint for how to build alliances. It's like, hey, we know we're the core. Let's just get our people and just work our way like this. And all of a sudden, we're sitting at Final Four 3, and we've turned on people, yes, but we have never turned on each other. And I feel like what usually happens is people have that core and feel like they have to turn on each other, like that center of the onion. They feel like they have to turn on each other before they have. It's like, you don't have to do that. You don't. And I'm interested to see how the rest of this season goes when it comes to that, because like Julia said, I don't see anyone sticking with wherever we're at in this part of the season. Lydia, you were going to say something.
No.
Oh no, you weren't saying. Okay, so we get to the Survivor Cambodia Sorry Abby challenge. This is what I wrote down in my notes, and it looks like was it episode 1 or 2? The episode that we pointed out David in his jeans. It seemed like you guys got blown out pretty fast during this. Like, it seemed like you guys were exhausted by the end of this. What was the distance between where you guys had to put the rings and the rest of the challenge?
It was really far because they were a lot of stations and they were like really spaced out. I mean, I don't really know how to like measure distance, but I mean, they were probably, 50 yards or something. I don't know. They were super far. I don't know. That's probably like super exaggerating because I'm out of shape and I was like dying.
If it was 50 yards, I mean, I know Daniel's in the comments. If Daniel's in the comments,
that's very exaggerating.
All of you look gassed. It's not just you. It doesn't matter how out of shape you are. 2 football fields. That's 220 yards?
Okay.
If y'all had to run 220 yards for that, then I can understand how you're that exhausted.
It felt like that to me, but like I'm sure it was probably like not that big of a deal.
Julie, what did you think of this challenge?
I love this challenge. Any iteration of this challenge, hearing the stories. I love it. I think it's a really fun one to watch because, you get to hear the story, kind of remember it yourself as everyone's doing it. Love this challenge. Another great classic from the Pennsylvania team. Oh gosh.
Okay, I feel like the gravel will definitely fuck with you. I need actual I believe this comment, but like if anyone else can confirm that it was actually two football, that would make sense why you guys were so gassed. And actually, I would give more credit to literally anyone that did this challenge because two football fields and you're running back and forth and doing this, that's insane. So for you going into the show, so I guess the first question would be, is this the type of challenge that you normally enjoy? And two, how did you feel going into it once you realized what it was?
I'm usually pretty good at memory, so I thought if I could remember the story, that me not being a good runner wouldn't matter as much. But I didn't even remember. Like, I think my brain was like really fried from like lack of sleep and everything by this point. So I really did bad. Like, I probably came back 3 or 4 times with wrong ones. And then I was just like gassed. So, running not my forte.
I mean, Jabbar looked like he was pacing himself. So like,
Yeah.
there were times that he was just walking and like,
Yeah, I was definitely
a good idea.
Once it gets to a point, might as well.
Once you get to a certain point, it's like, all right, slow and steady. I know Aesop's Fables. I know that the turtle wins, so like maybe I'll win this one. But ultimately, so the way it's edited, it looks like it's Emily versus Ben, and then all of a sudden at the end, it's like, oh no, psych, it's Ethan that wins.
Yeah.
And Ethan picks charisma, right? Yeah. Lydia, up to this point in the game, now that you know this twist, this extra twist for the merge, which ones were you kind of looking at? Were you like, as far as like charisma, as far as chaos, were there any ones you were like, if I win, I have to go after that one?
No, I was thinking if I win, I want to go for one of the more positive sounding ones, which I think was kind of the same mindset that Ethan had, where it's like things like chaos and death sound a little more scary than like, charisma or, something like that. So yeah, I definitely was leaning towards either not taking anything or taking one that sounded a little nicer.
Okay. And Julia, when we see Ethan picks her, because everyone like at this point in the episode, there are a couple people that not figure out what it is, but they have guesses on what charisma is going to entail. I know hindsight or whatever. What did you think when you were watching the episode? What do you think charisma actually meant in the moment that it was picked?
I didn't know necessarily it was going to be revealing her vote. I assumed it was going to be some sort of getting information, whether it be on the advantage, whether it be public, whether you got to watch someone go and cast their vote. When I hear charisma, I think of social connections and gathering information through those. So I assumed it was some version of getting a piece of information at Tribal.
And I would say that I guess I didn't put much thought into what it was. It was just more of he said, "What is it, like his best personality trait or something like that?" Is that he has charisma. I'm like, I love that. I want to talk about Kayla right quick because Kayla's really the only name that I'm convinced is going to catch votes at Tribal because it's kind of put out there. It's kind of shot down by JMac, and we'll get to that. Kayla, we get back to camp and Kayla. In my notes, I have Kayla wants to keep it Borneo style. Kayla doesn't want to talk about the vote with anyone. Kayla just wants everyone to just go vote for who they personally want to do, and then you can talk about it afterwards. And Daniel told us last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't know if he told us in the chat or while he was here, that she was Mel's pole dancing instructor or whatever, and like it doesn't come from this community. but I think that she would do really well on like a challenge type LRG because I would say that's the type of mentality that you might want. I don't do the challenge, but I'm assuming that's the type of mentality you would have in that. Liddy, for you, like, so one, did you have game talks with Kayla up to this point in the game? And two, because I know that I think at one point, yeah, because you want to potentially target her. What was your reasoning behind that?
I didn't really have any game talk with Kayla up to this point. I think she was a little bit seen as an easier vote versus like taking a bigger shot, just because everybody kind of knew that she wasn't super into the strategy part of it, and that she was just like kind of not wanting to like strategize hard. So it'd be kind of hard to like include her in your plans. So it's kind of like, well, if we can't include her in our plans, then it's kind of like, you know, might as well write her name. But I think I think that her attitude towards not wanting to strategize was what caused Green to feel comfortable to write her name.
Yeah, I get that. Julie, what do you think of? I mean, I feel like we talk about Kayla a lot. What do you think about Kayla after this episode is done at this point?
It's just hard because perception is everything in these games, and I feel like once an entire group of people writes you off as not strategic or not social or not something in the game, it can be really hard to crawl back from that, especially in an LRG where you're only here probably for another 2 days, day and a half. So I worry for her long-term prospects if she makes it farther of her chance to win.
And so we get this moment where Kayla's name is brought up, and JMac does shoot it down. And from where I'm sitting, I haven't seen Kayla say that she doesn't want to be there or anything. It just kind of seems like she just doesn't want to do the strategy part of it, which, okay, fine. But JMac's very against it. And then we get to a lot of strategy talk where we really don't hear names. We hear conversations. We see a lot of these conversations. We don't really see. We see people working with each other, but we never see like definitive names. And so for me, going into tribal, I'm like, okay, I've heard Kayla's name whispered. People, maybe Ben, maybe I think when Jabbar and Kayla were talking, I think Tyler's name came up. I had no real, and this is the second week in a row where this has happened. I have no real clue what's on the table and what's not on the table. And you can either run into a game changer situation where it's like you feel like the production is like trying to purposely fuck with the audience, or in a positive way, which this season is doing. It's like, okay, you actually kept us interested in seeing what's going to happen next. It's not going to be, gotcha. It's just going to be, no, we got you, but like we left breadcrumbs to say, hey, this was the plan all along. Before we get to the actual vote, I skipped. I said Kayla needs to play the challenge in my notes. The Ethan's twist. Oh, before we get that, Lydia, into tribal, did you feel like whatever plan you were part of was going to be the actual plan?
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
Going into tribal, did you believe that the plan that you knew, like the actual plan, was the plan that was actually going to happen? Like,
Yeah,
did you feel like
I thought it was.
was funny business or no?
No, I got a little nervous when Tyler had to vote publicly, but like since we had kind of already had that conversation, like it helped that we could put the vote on Kayla for the specific fact that Kayla wasn't voting with them. Like Kayla already said she was going to vote for Tyler, and we believed that that's what she was going to do if she said that. So I did believe that the plan that I thought was going to happen was going to happen. And I do think that Ben was the plan for a while, so that's probably why we didn't see like as many of the conversations with like, because I think his name was pretty solidified, and it kind of would have given it away.
I think the one thing I want to bring up from that post-challenge pre-tribal strategizing is when Oluwiki was sitting as a group, and we have that where J-Mac shoots down Kayla's name, says absolutely not. When you're up, the last thing you want to do is be nice to the enemy. And it just brought me back to that first post-swap tribal council where we see Sam really mull it over of, do I be nice to them? Do I let Josh go? Or do I do what I think is best for me strategically? And just the dichotomy of the situations was it was very nice. It was a nice touch looking back on it.
Absolutely. And I, Lydia, you've already briefly touched on it. Julie, what did you think about what charisma was, what it ultimately ended up being? Being able to see Tyler's vote, or picking who you got to see, whose vote you got to see, basically.
Yeah, I like it as an advantage. I think it's just along the lines of what Liz had last tribal council, not super game breaking. I'm hoping the advantages stay along this line or these lines for the remainder of like the amulets. It was really good. I think the way Tyler played it was great. Yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed it.
Lydia, what are your thoughts on advantages just in general? And with this twist at the merge of everyone that wins immunity gets an extra, something. What are your thoughts on all of that?
You kind of hear me say in this episode about how I was like, oh, well, there could potentially be 2 idols in play at this point. And then I was like, wait, no, there could be 3 because there could be the 2 original tribe idols plus another one. I figured something had to have come from the altar. I kind of had the assumption that as many people had gone to the altar, there were that many advantages potentially in the game. So it was a lot, especially so you could have advantages floating around from pre-merge, but now we have the amulet thing, so it's like a lot to take into consideration all the time, and that was really stressful. So I think that I enjoy the mechanism of the advantages, but like to play with them is so hard.
No,
Great to watch. Hard
yeah,
to play.
it makes for great TV, but when you're in the shit, it's like, no, fuck all of this. I hate all of it unless I have it.
Right.
So we vote. Kayla's basically the vote that saves herself almost. Oh, not really. Like she was, but anyway, she votes for Tyler. The vote ties, and oh yeah, and Tyler has his Peter moment basically, and says, "Hey guys, like there's this, there's that, so just be aware of this." And it's like, oh god, what are you doing? And I didn't think that we were getting a confessional where someone actually pointed out. I thought that would be until that would happen in the next episode, but we do
I'm flipping.
we get a confessional in this where it's like, yeah, that was weird what Tyler just did. So
it kind of goes to show like
moment,
in real time how quickly things can change in a game, like just by one thing that someone says or does, like it can just switch like that. And like I do think you kind of like are seeing that in real time a little bit with people's reactions to certain things. Some of my favorite parts of these episodes have been the body language in tribal council, especially those early pink ones. So I think at this point our like nervous systems are just so like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, everything's been crazy, like every tribal. So, yeah, it's funny to see the reactions of like happening as we're voting.
The
I
Jabbar
want to
side
see.
eye. The Jabbar side eye has happened in almost every episode. So Yeah.
I want to see all of those voting confessionals because the ones we saw were great. I can imagine the ones we didn't see after that were probably just as entertaining of what the fuck did we just watch?
I mean,
As I was talking, Lydia,
mhm.
what's going through your head personally, if you can remember?
Oh, I definitely was like thinking I wish he would stop talking because he does love to monologue. And sometimes it just gets to be a lot when you're sitting, we're like in direct sunlight. This tribal council is the worst tribal council I've ever been in. It was like directly in the sun. It was so, so hot. And we kept having these revotes. So we're like double the time sitting there. And so, yeah, I was definitely thinking that I wish he didn't do that. And I, the part about it, like just for me personally, that I was like not digging was like the fact that it felt like he was like kind of trying to like speak for like all of us pink. And I don't think we necessarily shared his sentiments. So that was a little bit like cringy.
He made a good point on earlier on when he talked about what I've been trying to do throughout the
Mhm.
portion of this game is other the old Capote tribe. I want it to be us and I want them to be less than, which I think is a great strategy. You keep your group together, you have to say that other group, they're bad, they smell, we don't want to work with them. But when you do that so publicly at tribal council, not only are you rubbing the jury who's there the wrong way, you're rubbing the people you might need to potentially work with in the future the wrong way. And the people, like, there's no benefit in doing that when you're doing it so publicly because it shows just a little bit of a lack of decorum.
And that's Julia's boy. So
And that's my boy. That's
that's
my,
Julia's
so
boy.
yeah.
If and we get Jordan saying, or Jordan, I say Jordan throwing shade, but like it's, hey, I'm sorry for that. Like that is voting professional. Like, sorry, Tyler said that. And that was weird. Um, but we ultimately lose Ben here. And you know, when the first vote was coming through and him and Kayla locked arms, I thought that was really cute. But so we lose Ben here. Ben, who, depending on the episode, we got I think the problem is because he was in a tribe that kept winning, we didn't get a lot of content from him until later on the episode or later on the season. But I enjoyed what we got of Ben. Um, Lydia, final thoughts on Ben as I'm out there with them. And was he someone when you got there that you knew anything about, or you know?
No, I didn't know anything about Ben, but he was a really fun guy, and I think you can tell through his confessionals that he really has a strategic mindset. He really knows the game, but like it was just kind of like a series of unfortunate events for him
Yeah.
with like him losing his vote multiple times, like his vote out being the first time he actually got to vote. And I think if he had maybe their tribe had lost a few times or he'd started on the other tribe, like he could have really been like a really big player. I think it's just like unfortunate that like the green kind of like was easy pickings at this point. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like
Yeah.
you're too nice and too cool, so you gotta go.
that's definitely the vibe I got from him. Julia.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate. This seemed to be a comedy of errors for Ben. He kept trying, but it was just one of those kept falling on his face, unfortunately. I think had it been a little bit different, maybe had your swap tribe gone to a tribal, had more opportunities to make bonds with um, different people, it could have been different. But unfortunately, sometimes luck just isn't on your side.
And so now we hit the final 10, and it seems like at least the two people that don't know what's going to happen both agree that the game's going to become more fluid. I like
Excited.
I'm very convinced that there's just nothing that I have seen this season would make me think that people are just going to stick to what they know longer than they should. But if it happens, that'd be the biggest plot twist of the season, and I wouldn't hate it or anything. It'd just be like, wow, that actually did it. What's up? Don't
Let
raise
me
your
ask
hand.
you a question.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what round is like optimal? Like if you were gonna flip on this situation, like if you were a pink and you wanted to change it up, like what would be the optimal round, do you think?
I
At
think,
this point in the game,
yeah,
9.
historically, I would say 9. However, I think given the extra variable of someone on Old Capo and Kayla saying, I'm not just going to vote with you guys, that gives anyone who wants to flip over less numbers to work with. You take one more of them out, you need a whole chunk of people to flip over to make something happen. We have an extra vote in play. We have whatever amulet could come out next round. I think, although historically 10 isn't a crazy round, I think in this situation, it might be the best time to start making something happen.
Is that the
It's my
answer
2
you want
cents.
to say?
It's my that's my 2 cents.
Lydia, any final thoughts on this season so far, up to where we are at? Are you enjoying it? How's the rest of the cast enjoying it? Are you excited to see where the edit goes? Like, I know you know where the game goes. Are you excited to see where the edit goes with everything?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think that we all are enjoying it. Like we're still like very active chatting about it and everything. So it's kind of fun. You do get a few of those like little tidbits of like, oh, I didn't know that, but for the most part, it's like really fun just watching it back. It was like a lot of fun being there, so like it kind of brings, you know, those feelings back a little bit. So I've really enjoyed it.
And this was what, July of last year?
Yeah, July.
July. Okay.
And the editing is so good. It was like
Oh,
beyond like what I
Yeah,
expected, like
it's great.
completely beyond. And so that makes it even like more fun to like watch and to like share with your friends and family and things like that.
yeah. During the story, they cut back to a Borneo clip out of nowhere. Julie, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I kind of have a question for you about something happened earlier on the episode, but I want to make sure I touched on it. So we see one of those many conversations between you and Jordan where you guys are talking and it cuts to a confessional, you talking about the extra vote
Mhm.
and not knowing that it had happened, and that he had gotten that, especially when you were so forthcoming to your alliance about yours and
Yeah.
everything like
Yeah.
that, and everyone knew about it. In the moment, did that set off any alarm bells for you? Is that something that worried you, or you
It,
just chalked it up
it
to
it actually wasn't, it didn't worry me because if I was in his position where I could have kept mine secret, I would have. Mine was kind of like a little bit public
yeah,
from the start. So I didn't blame him for not telling me, and especially because the fact that when he brought the information forth when it was most benefiting to him, which was during the swap, and I wasn't there during the swap. The only thing that kind of annoyed me about it was like the fact that I had like gone through the trouble of passing JMac my extra vote at the challenge, not knowing that he had an extra vote already, and I was just like, oh, that was kind of stressful. Like I wish I would have just like they would have been fine without it, you know.
Well, Lydia, thank you so much for first of all reaching out, but thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll have another one of your cast members next week, which I'm really excited. Well, and I'm really enjoying the season. Like, and I've looked forward to watching basically every week. And so I'm excited to see where this is going. We're getting into like what we all think is going to be a crazy part of the game. Whether it is 10 or 9 that craziness happens really doesn't matter because we're invested. Like I said, in this episode, we're not hearing real names, but it never feels like it still keeps us invested, even though like it's not, they're not telling us what's happening. And I really appreciate that. Lydia,
you
do
want to
you
announce our special guests for next week?
Yeah, we have Tyler coming on next week.
Woo! I love to hear Tyler talk. I love his confessionals. Like you know, he really has a really good grasp of like you said, like the numbers and like everything that's going on. So I like to hear what comes out of his brain.
So yeah, we're absolutely excited to have him and anyone else that wants to if you want to join us again at any point, we'd be glad to have you. I'm
Thank you for
hoping
having me. It's really fun.
thank you all for continuing to tune in. Make sure to subscribe not only to the LRG Instagram and YouTube channel, but also to Survivor Pennsylvania. Yeah, thank you, Daniel, for letting us continue to do this. And we will see you all next week. We'll see you guys next week.
Next week.
Yeah.
Same bat time.